What's going on, everyone? It's Real Agent Adam, and I'm just a real guy giving real advice about real estate. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the home buying process here in 2023. This is going to be an overview of the home buying process from start to finish to make sure that you know exactly what it takes to buy a piece of real estate. So buying real estate can be, honestly, a pretty difficult thing to do. It's definitely not easy, and there's not as much information out there as you'd like about how to go through this process. What's the steps that I have to take in order to get from the start to the end of a real estate transaction? And that's exactly what this video is all about. The very first thing that you want to do when you're looking to buy real estate, whether it's for your own personal home or for an investment property, you want to start at the same place. And that's going to be meeting with a local realtor in your area and having what's called a buyer's consultation. This buyer's consultation is the most important and critical step in buying a piece of real estate. Why? Because it's where you come up with a game plan. If you don't have a plan, then what are you doing? You're running around in circles like a chicken with its head cut off. And who wants to do that? I know, I sure as shit don't. So when it comes to buying a piece of real estate, you want to make sure that you meet with a local realtor in your area who knows the area well and who seems like they actually know what they're doing. This is going to be a huge differentiator of whether this home buying process goes well for you or not. A good realtor, when you meet with them in this buyer's consultation, they're going to go over things like your finances, what a mortgage actually looks like and what it's comprised of, how the real estate market is behaving right now in your current time and day, and what the local market is doing compared to the national market. Most of the news and all of the things that you're going to see on TV are geared toward the national market, and the national market can look a lot different than what your local market is. So finding somebody who knows their local market and is an expert in that area is really going to help for you to be able to make the best possible decisions, what I like to call the most informed decisions that you can make. From there, they're also going to talk about how to get pre-approved and, well, the steps of the home buying process. They're going to guide you through this, talking about how they get paid, how the real estate profession works, and how buying a house is done. Once you do that, you're going to want to reach out to a lender, of course, unless you have the cash, but let's face it, most of us don't have piles of cash laying around, right? So you're going to want to talk to a local lender. Again, I'm going to keep harping on this local part of this equation. It's really important to deal with people that are in your local area because they know things about the local area that are going to matter for you purchasing a piece of real estate. You're purchasing it in the local area, and having an expert in both a realtor and your lender, whether you go through somebody that is a mortgage broker or if you go through a traditional brick and mortar bank. I know for me, I prefer a lender over a bank. And that's just because they can do things a little bit quicker, they have a little bit more control, and there's not as much red tape to go through as you would with a traditional bank. Now, that's not always the case, so please don't take that as the only advice that you need, but I think that's gonna help you to find the right lender for you. I'm always a big fan too of getting not one, but at least two quotes from two different lenders. So if you have a good agent, they're probably gonna have at least two people to recommend to you. And I highly, highly recommend that you reach out to both because you have a 45-day window in order to pull your credit multiple times, and you only get one hit on your credit. So take advantage of it, shop it around a little bit, find a good rate, find a good lender, find somebody that you click with. But making sure that you get that pre-approval in place before you go out and start looking at homes is going to be absolutely critical. It's going to do a couple things for you. First and foremost, it's going to make sure that you have the right budget. Knowing your budget is the first step of the process. Now, in that buyer's consult, you're going to go over your finances a little bit with that realtor, and they're probably going to be able to give you a pretty good idea of what you can afford. Or if you already have a number in your mind in which you don't want to go over, that's great. You don't have to spend more than that, but we at least need to know that you can get approved for as much as you want to spend. Because the last thing that I'm sure you want to do is to go out, start looking at these homes, falling in love, and then finding out that you can't even make an offer on it because, well, you can't afford it, right? So getting that pre-approval in place helps to stop that from ever happening. And on top of it, nobody's ever going to accept your offer without having a pre-approval in place. That'd be like me walking up to you and saying, hey, I want to buy something from you, but I'm not going to show you that I have the money to do it. You just need to trust me, and then in 30 days when I buy it from you, I'm going to bring the money then. Would you take that deal? I know I wouldn't, so why would the seller, right? The next step in the home buying process is getting yourself set up on an MLS search. So the MLS is what we as realtors use to upload our listings to the internet. This is how sites like Zillow and Trulia and Homes.com get all of their information. These third-party websites, they're great, right? For free, they give you all of this information. Don't get me started on them selling your information to different people like myself who buy this information to try to reach out to you. But that being said, they are great tools, but they're not as good as the MLS. They're not as up to date, they're not as accurate, and well, they just kind of stink in comparison. I mean, to be honest with you, I've seen a lot of misinformation on there, and as much as literally the property address being wrong. I saw that once and I was actually shocked. So once you get set up on that MLS search, from there, you're going to be searching for properties online. You're going to be scrolling through your phone, seeing ones that you like, flipping through the photos, and then you're going to start to see properties that you actually want to see in person. This is the fun part, guys. This is the shopping of it. This is the part that you will enjoy. Unless you're in a tough market like what we're in right now here in 2023, then it can be a little bit challenging, a little bit frustrating, and a little bit demoralizing, but that's for a different story. Typically, the shopping portion of it is the fun part of the process. So you're gonna text your realtor or give them a call or shoot them an email and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Realtor, 123 Banana Street looks really cool. When can we go and check it out? They're gonna get back to you as soon as they can, and they're gonna say, hey, I'm available this day and this time, or what's your schedule look like? Let's go and set it up. Then from there, you're gonna start actually seeing these properties in person. You're gonna go through these homes, and with a good realtor, they're gonna be asking you what you think of the home each and every single time. I know for myself, something that I like to do, it's a little fun, especially for couples. I'll have you guys turn back to back, and I'll have you put numbers up on a scale of 1 to 10 of what you think of the home. Sometimes I won't allow you to use 7 because 7's a good safety fallback number, so I'll make you choose 8 or 6. That way you have to decide if you like it or if you don't. You can't sit on the fence with a 7, but it really helps me to be able to gauge, or your realtor to be able to gauge, what you guys are actually thinking of the property. I really like doing this for couples especially, because then they don't give each other their input. I know if you're anything like me and my girlfriend, well, I can just give her a look or she can give me a look, and that will quickly change my or hers decision. So if you're trying to avoid that, and I know I like to avoid it because I like to get separate opinions and then I bring them together and I take an average. If one person's a 7 and the other person's a 6, well, together we have a 6.5. So then that gives us a really good idea of where we're standing on the house. If you're above a 7, that to me sounds like something you want to make an offer on. If you're an 8.5 or higher, that's something that you absolutely love and you want to go all out because this is the perfect home for you. So from there, now that you've seen some properties that you like, you're going to find 1 or 2 that you really have fallen in love with and you want to make an offer on. When you go to make that offer, you're going to be submitting that paperwork. In Pennsylvania, it's called the agreement of sale, but in other states, it could be called other things. That agreement of sale is going to outline all of the details of the offer that you're making. These are things like the price that you're paying for the property, how much money you're going to be wrapping up into a mortgage and what you're putting down on the house, whether or not you're asking for inspections. This is the time frame of which you're going to go to the settlement table, and other small things like your earnest money deposit. Now, from there, you're going to go ahead and submit that offer. Once you submit that offer to the other side, there's a time period that they have in order to respond to that. It's going to be specific to your contract and your state of how that plays out. Once they respond to you, it's going to go a couple different ways. First and foremost, they could accept that offer. That's the one that we all want, right? But it doesn't always go that way. If they don't accept that offer, well, they could just simply say no, or they could give you a counter back to that offer. If they say no, you may be in a competitive situation where you'll only have one opportunity. Typically, if you're facing competition and there's more than one other offer in play, you only get one shot. You got to bring your best foot forward, but if there's no other offers, but they just don't like the one that you gave them, they may counter that offer with a different offer. Then you guys can go back and forth and negotiate a little bit. If you have a good realtor, they're gonna do a great job on that portion of it. And from there, you're gonna eventually come to a decision of whether or not you guys ultimately get the house or don't get the house. If you don't get the house, that's okay, no worries. You're just gonna go back to your MLS search. You're gonna keep scrolling online. You're gonna start looking at homes again, and you're gonna repeat this process until you find something that you love, make an offer on, and they accept that offer. Now, woo, your offer's been accepted. Game over, right? Not even close. This is what I tell people, you're just getting started in this process. There's a lot that has to unfold to get to the settlement table, and there's unfortunately a couple different ways that this deal can still fall apart and not make it to the table. Now, I don't want to scare you with this, okay? I'm not here to give you doomsday and say, oh my God, you're never gonna get a house, but I do like to give the proper expectations moving forward of what you can really expect and where some things can actually go wrong along the way, because why? When you have a plan, everything always goes better. So, what happens after you're under contract? Well, the first thing that you're gonna have to do, and this is Pennsylvania specific, okay? For other states, I don't know if it works exactly the same, but here's how it goes down in Pennsylvania. The first thing that you have to do is you have to give what's called your earnest money deposit. This is what we call good faith money that you're putting down on the home. This is money that you're allowing the seller's agent's brokerage to hold on to during the time that you're under contract, or depending on the state, in escrow is another term that they use for it. This is typically done within the first 5 days of going under contract. In my market, a typical amount is usually about 1% of the purchase price, or $1,000 for every $100,000 in sales price. Now, that is not exactly what you have to offer. You can give more or less depending on how competitive you want to be, but it's just a good rule of thumb to live by, of an easy way to figure out how much should I be putting down. Once you put down that earnest money deposit, the next big thing that happens is something that happens behind the scenes. This is going to be your lender ordering your appraisal. This is a third-party service that comes out and does a valuation of the home. They take similar properties, what we call comparables, and they basically take those in comparison to the home that you're buying. They go back usually typically only 6 months in the past, and they try to keep it within a certain radius or perimeter around the property that you're buying, taking into consideration things like school district, taxes, square footage, bedroom, bathroom count, so on and so forth. This is going to give them a determination of how much the property is worth. Now, that process just gets started at the beginning, but it doesn't get finished usually till about 30 days later. That's why it's important to make sure that this process gets started at the very beginning. Don't worry, this is something that your realtor and your lender are going to take care of for you. You don't have to do anything for it. Once you got the appraisal underway, now we move to the next stage of the process. This is going to be the inspection or due diligence period. Usually, in my neck of the woods, you get about 10 days to do this, but you can change that depending on your contract. And with this, you can do things like a home inspection, a wood-destroying insect inspection, septic, water inspection, radon, lead-based paint, so on and so forth. There's tons of different inspections out there, and the inspections that you want to do are up to you. Now, in Pennsylvania, this is kind of sort of a buyer beware state. You're buying the property as is unless you do this due diligence piece. So if you decide to not get any inspections, waive those inspections is the term that we use in the industry, well, then you are buying it as is, and any repairs or any maintenance or any upkeep is going to be on you after you buy the property. So if you buy a property and it's on a septic and the septic fails 30 days after you move in, well, unfortunately, that is your problem. That is not the seller's problem. Now, there is certain exceptions to this rule. If the seller knew that there was problems and they were hiding it on purpose, that's bad news bears, and we definitely don't want that to happen. But if something like that did, there is repercussions and things that you can do to try to make sure that that expense isn't your burden if the seller was suppressing information. That would be what we call a material defect, and they have to make sure that they tell people about these material defects to the best of their knowledge. During this inspection period, you're going to have another third party come out, an inspector who's licensed with the state, and they're going to take a look at the house. And again, what they look at is determined by you. For a lot of people, they end up getting a home inspection and a wood destroying insect inspection. This covers typically about 95% of your issues, especially if you don't live on a well and septic. That takes care of like 97% of your issues in a home. So these are pretty encompassing and pretty in-depth. Typically, you're going to get a report when it's done, usually anywhere from like 30 to 40 pages in length. There's going to be a bunch of stuff on there. Don't get yourself too scared with this, okay? Because I'm going to tell you right up front, every single home on planet Earth has problems. I don't care if it was built yesterday, if it's done tomorrow, if it was built in 1824, 1947, or 2006, that house has problems. Every single one. My house that I'm living in here has problems. Every single house has problems, okay? It is all right to have some issues with a house, but we want to make sure that there's no major issues, things that you have to take care of right away that you don't have the money for, or things that you just don't want to be there or don't want to happen. Of course, everybody wants a perfect home, right? But we can't get everything that we want. So we need to come with some fair compromise. In this report, you're going to have things that are typically considered significant in nature. Significant findings is what we call them in the industry. These are usually the things that we care the most about, and these are the things that we pay the most attention to in this report, and this is where another round of negotiations can take place with the seller based on what we find in this report. Now, I want to throw a little caveat in here, okay? And this is not the time or the place where we get back at the seller for what we paid for the property or nickel and dime these poor people to death, because you have to remember, they're probably buying a home too and have to go through the same thing. So if there's an outlet without a cover or something minor that's a $20 fix, this isn't something that we're trying to come after them for. But if you have problems like the HVAC system isn't working, or your roof has a leak, or the roof is 45 years old and it's 30-year shingles, these are all big problems that we probably want to get taken care of or get some sort of compensation for. So these are things that we can negotiate with. Ask the seller to get them done before we go to settlement. Ask them for a credit to have it done after settlement. Ask them to pay for somebody to do it after settlement of your choosing. There's lots of different options we can come with, and there's definitely ways that we can come to a resolution on this. Again, you go back and forth with negotiations on this. If you cannot come to a resolution, this is somewhere that you can end up losing the deal, and the deal can get terminated and you do not buy the house. If that happens and you chose to elect inspections, you will get your earnest money deposit back. As long as you had the inspections elected, you will always get that earnest money deposit back, okay? And that is what happens with earnest money deposit. That earnest money is there to protect the seller if you decide to back out simply because you had cold feet or because you decided to back out on something that you did not write or express in the contract. Everything else that's in that contract, that is locked tight, and you will get your earnest money deposit back for that. Now that we got past the inspection phase of buying a home, now we have what's called your title work. This is actually something that got started in the background before you did the inspections, but it's something that I typically bring up after the inspection period. This is not something that you really have to worry about too much, but it is one of the most important things that you're going to do and get when you buy a home. Title insurance is protecting you against past liens and encumbrances that are on the home. This is if somebody had a line of credit to buy a pool in 1970, or maybe they were a bad noodle and decided that they wanted to get a judgment against them because they didn't pay a contractor for doing work in 2002. Either way, the title company is there to ensure you that you're getting this house free and clear of any encumbrances before the mortgage that you're about to place on it. If for whatever reason, during your time of ownership, that something comes back that they missed or didn't catch, they will compensate you for it and you will not have to pay anything out of your pocket. And that's what makes title insurance one of the most lucrative things that you can buy when you're getting a home. If you're getting a mortgage, you don't have a choice. You have to get it anyway. But if you're buying cash, you can have the choice to not get title insurance. I would never, ever, ever recommend doing that. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. It's literally so cheap for the amount of protection that you get out of it, because this lasts the entire time that you own the property. As long as it's in your hands, you are protected. When it passes to the next person, it's their job to get their own title insurance to make sure that they're covered. So that takes us back to one of the things I started talking about at the beginning, the appraisal. The appraiser, they're going to go out to the property. This is something that you are allowed to attend, but honestly, I don't think it's very worth it. They're only going to be there for maybe 10 to 20 minutes. They're not really going to talk to you at all during the process. They're really just there to make sure that they understand what the home looks like in person. They're going to snap a couple photos or with their cell phone, and then they're going to go back, and the real work that they're doing is done at their computer desk. This is where they're doing all of their comparables and making sure that their information is correct. You're going to get this report back for the appraisal, and there's a couple different ways that this can play out. If the appraisal comes back and we make value, by making value, what I mean by that is the house has appraised for the price that you paid for it. So let's use an example of $200,000 here. Let's say you bought the house for $200,000 and it came back and it was worth $200,000. I'm gonna give you a call, or your realtor is gonna give you a call, and they're gonna say, congratulations. Also, the appraisal can come back less than what we bought the property for. So let's say you bought the property for $200,000, but it comes back at $190,000. Yikes. It's never what you want, but hey, maybe you'll get the property for cheaper. So how can this play out? The seller can lower the price to $190,000 and you guys can move forward. You guys can bring an extra $10,000 in cash to cover that difference. I know for a lot of people, you won't have that ability to do that. So unfortunately, that won't be an option that's on the table. A third option is going to be a hybrid of those first two options. The seller's going to come up a little bit of price and you're going to bring a little bit extra in cash. Maybe they're going to drop it to $192, but you have to bring an extra $2,000 in cash. If neither of those three options work, we are left with the fourth and final option. Of course, nobody ever wants this, but it's an unfortunate reality of things that happen in real estate. And well, the deal can again be terminated. If that deal is terminated, you're going to get your earnest money deposit back because that's something that we wrote into the contract that it had to appraise for the price that we paid for the property. Then you're going to move back to the very beginning of this whole process. You're going to start looking at homes again online, viewing homes, and trying to get another offer accepted. If you make it past the appraisal and everything works out well and you're still buying this house, well, congratulations. You have like a 97% chance that you're making it to the table at this point, because those are the biggest hurdles that you have to get through. The final hurdle that we have to worry about is that final approval from your lender saying, congratulations, you are officially approved for your mortgage. Well, wait, Adam, didn't I already have a pre-approval? Didn't they already tell me I'm approved for the mortgage? Yes and no. A pre-approval is not a perfect science. There's still a lot of documentation that they need along the way. There's also things that can happen along the way, like you could lose your job, or you could be silly and go try to buy a car in the middle of the transaction. And of course, you're not going to make it through the transaction if your debt to income ratio gets thrown off along the way. So don't go buying cars along the way, and don't go quitting your job, and more than likely you're going to get that final approval. Once you get that final approval, your realtor should give you a call and say, congratulations, you did it. You made it past all of the major hurdles. There's a 99.9% chance that you're getting this home now, unless you die, the seller dies, one of you lose your job, or the seller randomly decides they're not going to sell, or you randomly decide that you're not going to buy. You're getting the house at this point. From there, you're going to get final numbers drawn up. We usually get what's called a preliminary ALTA or HUD-1, and then we get a final ALTA or HUD-1. These are just fancy terms for the closing statement that shows the amount of money that you're bringing out of pocket. When you first made the offer on the house, your agent should have provided you, or at least your lender should have provided you with a cost estimate. It should give you a pretty close roundabout to how much money is going to be coming out of your pocket, but it's never going to be an exact number. There's things that unfortunately we just can't account for, like settlement date changing, some rates changing, interest rate not being locked in time and that changing, or final sewer and trash bills or final water bills that we can't account for until the final day or two. That's why about 3 to 5 days ahead of time, you're going to get this prelim copy. Your agent's going to review that with you and make sure everything looks good. If it does, they're going to go ahead and say, hey, green light, let's go ahead and move forward. Then from there, about 24 hours before you go to the settlement table, if you're lucky, 48 hours, yes, 1 day before you go to the settlement table, you're finally going to know exactly how much money is coming out of your pocket to make this purchase. I know, it's stressful, right? Tell me about it. I completely sympathize with you, and trust me, I wish I could make it different, but I just can't. It takes to the very end for you to know exactly the amount of money, and it's going to go down to the exact penny. It might be something like $13,425.22 or $129,782.32. It's going to be some random number like that. That's the number that you're going to go to the bank the day of or the day prior to, depending on when you get those final numbers, and go get your cashier's or certified check. That check is going to be made out in Pennsylvania to your title company. If you're in other states, you may use an attorney, and that will get made out to the attorney, and then they're going to disperse the funds to everybody who needs all of the funds. Right before you go to the settlement table, you're typically going to do what's called a pre-settlement walkthrough. This is one final walk around the house. You're gonna make sure everything's still in the same order in which you bought it in. You're gonna make sure that the toilet still flushes and the water still gets hot and the electricity's still on and nobody came and broke any windows, damaged anything, or ripped out any copper piping. Usually it doesn't take very long to do this. It's usually somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes to go through the home one last time and just verify that everything's still working correctly. As long as it is, well, good news. You're on your way to the settlement table. The settlement table is where you actually buy the house. This is the day that you're going to be handed keys. You have a stack of paperwork that you're gonna have to sign if you're getting a mortgage for the house. And by the time you get done with all of that paperwork, your hand is going to be cramped and you're going to feel very tired. But that's okay, because then at that point, your realtor is going to hand you a set of keys and they're going to say, congratulations, you did it. You purchased the home. Whether it's your first purchase or your 50th purchase, each and every single time it feels incredible. Once you do all of the handshaking and congratulating, then from there, you're going to go and probably take some photos in front of the house with a sold sign with your realtor, shaking their hand, giving them a hug, throwing your arm around them, and thanking them for the incredible job that they've done, assuming that they've done an incredible job. I know this sounds like a lot to manage and a lot to handle, but don't worry too much, because as long as you have a good realtor on your side, they're going to take care of like 90 to 95% of all of this for you. They're going to make sure everybody does their job and keep them on pace, so that way you can have a smooth ride all the way to the finish line. So congratulations to you. You just bought a house, and well, now you know a little bit more about this process. All right, so that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you so much for sticking it out to the end. If you could, please, I would love to hear your comments down below in the comments section. And don't forget to smash that subscribe button so that way you can get notified every single time I put out another awesome video.